Shiny Pokemon. Sometimes they're the coolest thing you've ever seen. Other times wait a minute. Other times they blend in with the crowd. These off-colored buttes inspired a whole community of people who seek them out. Game Freak in turn started acknowledging shinies more by giving us more ways to obtain them. But things got too good. Shiny hunting always required some level of stakes or tedium, especially if you were going after a more valuable shiny. But now those aforementioned shinies are shiny locked, and our variety of methods were replaced with single ones that let you farm shinies like never before. That inevitably led to the shiny dollar collapsing, as we went from shiny hunters to shiny gatherers. Since I've personally burned away countless precious hours of my life searching for shinies, it makes sense for me to act as a guide on our journey from where it all started to where we are now. The Game Boy Color, despite the advertised feature, was pretty limited in the colors it was able to show, meaning some shinies from Gold, Silver, and Crystal looked off since there was a limit to the amount of colors the screen could display. The greatest example being shiny Charizard, who originally looked like Barney. The graphical jump from the second to the third generation is on par with the jump from Gen 5 to 6. That visual overhaul makes this the earliest generation of games people will commonly hunt in. There are people who hunt in Gen 2 and even the first generation games through a method that involves doing math, but hunting in those games is more of a novelty. You'll mostly see full odds hunters playing Fire Red and Leaf Green if they want to hunt in Kanto, or Heart Gold and Soul Silver if they want to hunt in Johto. In Gen 3, the only official method for going after a specific shiny was trying to find it at full odds in the wild or soft resetting, but this only applies to special encounters. We wouldn't get our first methods of reducing shiny odds until Diamond and Pearl. Junichi Masuda is one of the main creative forces to shape Pokemon into what it is today. He's also been one of our main insights into a lot of behind the scenes stuff through his blog. In a blog post made on December 14th, 2007, he was excited to explain the new GTS mechanic to fans and elaborated on some features he hoped would stoke players' interest in the new ability to trade with people overseas. One feature was making rare colored Pokemon easier to find in eggs. We know this now as the Masuda method, the practice of breeding a Pokemon from your game's region with one from another. The Masuda method is a staple of shiny hunting and returned in every generation since its debut. Masuda, on the other hand, had some other methods that were apparently not as fun, leading to his demotion around Gen 6. The second shiny hunting method introduced in Diamond and Pearl was the PokeRadar, the first chaining method. In theory, the process of getting a shiny through the PokeRadar is simple. Use the radar to encounter the Pokemon you want in the shaken grass to start a chain. Then repeat the process 39 times until you get to the 40th round, where the shiny odds are maxed out, meaning you just have to reset over and over until a sparkling patch spawns. Maxed out shiny odds in only 40 encounters is the dream. The actuality of that is a list of convoluted rules you must rigidly follow for those 40 encounters. But even if you nail it, they put in a little prank mechanic that just randomly breaks your chain. The final method in Diamond and Pearl expands on the double battle mechanic introduced a generation prior. At certain points in the game, you're accompanied by another trainer who guides you through specific areas. During these parts of the game, when you run into wild Pokemon, the encounters are double battles, effectively doubling your shiny odds. Since these accompanied routes are scripted plot events, this is a time-sensitive method restricted to specific areas, and those areas are mostly caves. Gen 5 brought back double wild battles in routes with patches of dark grass, but those patches were spread all over Unova and didn't require any scripted story events with an accompanying trainer, giving players a massive variety in the Pokemon they could hunt at times 2 odds. The biggest thing Black and White contributed to shiny hunting was the Shiny Charm, which tripled the odds of encountering shiny Pokemon from 1 in 8,192 to 1 in 2,731. And this boost stacks with the double grass encounters, the Masuda method, and applied to encounters with legendaries around the map, but only certain legendaries, because this was also the generation to introduce the Shiny Lock. At this point, it was used sparingly. Reshiram and Zekrom are both Shiny Locked. It makes sense. These two are key figures in the story, so the static encounters are forgivable, but we know where this is going. Gen 6 was a very big deal for Pokemon. The graphical overhaul, fairy types, the French, mega evolutions, character customization. Seriously, it was a lot. Even if X and Y were messy, it's really hard not to have fun with these games, especially if you were a shiny hunter, because X and Y ushered in what I and a lot of others would call the golden age of shiny hunting. The first big thing that happened was a blanket slashing in half of shiny odds from 1 in 8,192 to 1 in 4,096. A controversial decision to some, but undeniably led to a boom in shiny hunters. You remember that detail for later like a Telltale character, okay? On top of the new odds, X and Y gave us the most shiny hunting methods of any Pokemon game to date. Returning ones include the Masuda method and the PokeRadar. Then there's the new Horde battle mechanic, which lets you encounter 5 Pokemon at once using Sweet Scent. The next new method is an offshoot of the newly revamped revamped multiplayer features. With each friend you added, you unlocked a monotype safari through that specific friend. A person's safari type and the selection of wild Pokemon are randomly assigned from a group of presets created for each type. These safaris can contain rare Pokemon including starters, and the shiny odds are a blanket 1 in 512, making it one of the simplest shiny hunting methods ever. The only caveat is, you need friends. The final new method is chain fishing. It's simple. Reel in the fish, keep reeling in the fish. The more fish you reel in, the higher the shiny odds are until it caps out at around 30. Then you just keep fishing until you see sparkles. This is a chaining method like the PokeRadar, so it can be broken if you move from the spot where you started or if you get no bite. This may be the most fun shiny hunting method of all time. It's simple and overpowered, but its trade-off is it only works on water spawns, so there's not a ton of variety when it comes to coverage, but occasionally, usually with the Super Rod, you could fish up aquatic, non-water types. Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire kept most of the methods featured in X and Y, but traded out the Friend Safari and the PokeRadar for another contender of best shiny hunting method of all time, the DexNav. The DexNav is one of your bottom screen apps. It shows the route you're currently in and all native Pokemon. Using it, you can encounter for specific Pokemon who spawn in as shaking grass. You just keep doing this, and as you encounter more of them, your odds will progressively increase. This is one of the best methods because you can select the specific Pokemon you want, and you keep the DexNav shiny boost for that Pokemon from that point on, represented by whatever their search level is. On top of that, there's also chaining bonuses that give you additional shiny rolls, chances for hidden abilities, and egg moves. One of the coolest parts about this method is once you beat the game and get the national dex, most of the routes get new DexNav exclusive spawns not native to Hoenn. This isn't a method of reducing shiny odds, but using the soaring mechanic, you could find Hoopa portals that warp the player to an area where they can encounter legendary Pokemon that aren't shiny locked, letting you shiny hunt most existing legendaries for the first time with the 6th generation's odds. This was also the first time you were able to hunt Reshiram and Zekrom. I have so much nostalgia and a very apparent bias for this era. I vividly remember getting my first shiny in Omega Ruby. It was before school and I was chain fishing on some water route, half asleep and not really thinking much of it until I was jump scared by a pink whale. That was my first hit and I've been chasing the dragon ever since. The 6th generation of Pokemon was the pinnacle of shiny hunting to most, so it was a pretty tough act for any games to follow. Luckily, going into Sun and Moon, we were treated to a really fun new hunting method. In Sun and Moon, certain species of wild Pokemon will call for help if you get them to low health. Every call for help is one encounter in your chain, and as you continue the chain, the shiny odds dramatically increase until they max out at a chain of 31 with 1 in 315 odds. Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon pretty much just brought back Hoopa portals, but called it something else. Now they're wormholes. The same logic applies. If you fly through these portals, you're warped to an area with a legendary encounter that you can soft reset for a chance of it rolling shiny. But now you can shiny hunt previously shiny locked Pokemon like Xerneas, Yveltal, and all the Ultra Beasts for the first time. Pokemon Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee are some of the most satisfying games to shiny hunt in, thanks to a lot of fun built-in features that let you interact with your Pokemon unlike any game before or since. This was also the first game to show shinies in the overworld and is a very visually charming game, so running, flying, or swimming around with your shinies feels cool as hell. It's sad that the only Pokemon game to come out on the Switch that feels like a polished, finished product came out 7 years ago. The 3DS era was certainly the golden age of shiny hunting, but for me, Let's Go gets grandfathered in with them instead of being roped in with the other Switch games. Going into Sword and Shield, something interesting happened. Typically, shiny hunting methods are discovered by fans testing and data mining. They're put in the games as Easter eggs mostly and are rarely acknowledged officially. But with Sword and Shield, the Pokemon website put out an article explaining the new method in great detail. Shiny hunting in this game is a mixed bag like Sword and Shield itself. Galar has some of the best shinies of all time, and there are some very charming routes you could hunt in, but most Pokemon are found in the wild area. An ugly prototype of something Game Freak is still trying to lock down. This generation also debuted the shiny starter lock. Why? Another trend started was locking older legendaries behind DLC instead of the post-games of whatever sets of remakes or sequels would have paired with Sword and Shield. Dynamax Adventures is the only way to shiny hunt Solgaleo, Lunala, Necrozma, the Tapus, and Zygarde. Scarlet and Violet continued DLC exclusive legendaries, but handled it just about as bad as it could. They for some reason included the Galarian horses, but not Calyrex, or either of Galar's box legends, but who cares because here's the kicker, everything is shiny locked. Legends Arceus created one of the most simple, fun, and universally beloved shiny hunting methods to ever exist in Mass Outbreaks. Just to patch it out of existence a month after the game came out, to replace it with the version you could only use after you beat the game. Very early in Legends Arceus, you unlock the ability to find Mass Outbreaks in the wild. Every Pokemon spawning in a mass outbreak has a 1 in 158 chance of being shiny. When you load into an area with a mass outbreak, that entire outbreak is already predetermined, even the ones that aren't spawned in yet. You used to be able to reset and chain outbreaks until you found one with a shiny, but after the Daybreak update, you can no longer encounter the same outbreak 2 times in a row. Meaning if you wanted to hunt a rare Pokemon, you better pray that first outbreak has a shiny because they took away your ability to reroll. This was intentionally patched out of the game and replaced with massive mass outbreaks, a mechanic you only unlock, again, after you beat the game. Why the two couldn't coexist is beyond me. Massive mass outbreaks are exactly what they sound like. Mass outbreaks on steroids. They were an indication of how Game Freak would approach shiny mechanics from that point on, and to many scholars, marks the shift from shiny hunting to shiny gathering. Scarlet and Violet don't have much variety in terms of shiny hunting. Mass outbreaks are back but work differently. I don't have much to say about this method. It's in the game from the start, and it's a method that lets you target a specific species, which is good, but it's really just not that innovative or engaging. Not to mention Scarlet and Violet are visually no bueno, to use the technical term. I do not like gatekeeping shiny hunting. I want as many people to be able to join the community as possible. But there is a point where the barrier of entry becomes too easy. And sandwiches are just so broken. It's not just a passive monotype shiny boost, you're also boosting spawn rates for that type. It's the most broken method of all time, and I know you're thinking, just don't use it, but even if I don't use it, other people will. When I'm grinding forever for my blue Pawniard and then I see someone post, "Lamau, check out my 20 shiny Bisharp, I just caught off one sandwich," it makes me feel like, well damn. I'm self-aware how silly it is to complain about shiny inflation, but think about other games with similar mechanics. Plenty of games have special items or skins that can only be obtained through hidden or out-of-the-way methods. If you offer the option for a grind and another option for people to speed through the process to the end goal, they're going to pick the latter most of the time. I saw most people using the sandwich method when posting about their Scarlet and Violet shinies, and I'm sure a lot of other people would say the same. Even I would break and use them if I had an outbreak that was in an area that killed my frame rate. That's the shiny hunter's dream. Everybody's been stuck on a hunt and thought, man, I wish I could just snap my fingers and make this shiny pop up. But that grind is important, and it's one of the last of its kind. I loved unlocking different armor pieces in Halo, but now you have to buy them. COD is another example. The coolest skins in the game used to be a reward to players who went through a grind, but now most people grind paid battle passes or just buy their skins outright. The situations aren't one-to-one, of course. Pokemon is less egregious since you don't have to pay for shinies, but the principle of making something that was once a special reward, super easy to get, still stands. Methods that appeal to longtime hunters and beginner-friendly ones can mutually exist. People had a lot of fun with sandwiches, and it brought a lot of new people into the community, so they were a net positive, but personally, the method isn't fun or rewarding. I've accepted that we're in an era of super accessible shinies. Just give me a fun and engaging method that runs the risk of failing. Unshiny lock all the stuff we used to be able to hunt. It only makes the games better and gives them literal hundreds of hours of replay value. Why take away things that used to make our RPG playthroughs more personalized? I have the hindsight of knowing where things are going, so my outlook is a lot more bleak than it was before the release of ZA. Legend ZA is the first Pokemon game without an odds-reducing hunting method since Gen 3, over 20 years. Which is ironic because, as I'm sure even people who don't engage with shiny hunting know, it's the single most broken game for farming shinies in Pokemon history, all thanks to one simple mechanical change. Shiny Pokemon can no longer despawn. I wouldn't like this change even if it wasn't super exploitable, because to me it's Game Freak misunderstanding the magic of the random shiny encounter, but it is exploitable, and exploiting it is the current hunting meta in ZA. You do this by spam flying into an area or spamming the bench. Shiny hunting is of course about getting the shiny, but it's also about the hunt. The hunt tells a story, the rare super fast ones and the painfully drawn out ones that are finally capped off with that sparkle. These stories make having the shinies on your team more satisfying. Sure, I could have been learning a skill or building a fulfilling social life, but on my deathbed I'm gonna look back and be glad I spent the time searching for that blue Psyduck. Another important thing is the community. I shiny hunt for me, but I also loved showing off my shinies to my friends and having them show me theirs. Seeing clips of people doing cool hunts got me hyped and made me want to pick up my DS and try it for myself. The community aspect is important, and that's where shiny inflation comes in. When the value of the shiny dollar goes down, it does have a ripple effect. If you couldn't tell already, I'm not happy with the shiny hunting meta in ZA, and I can't find a silver lining like with sandwiches. Earlier I made a very subtle heroin analogy I want to come back to. Shiny hunting from Gen 4 to 7 was akin to, say, some high quality heroin. It's more expensive, but it makes makes you feel better. And shiny hunting from massive mass outbreaks to ZA is like a less potent but way cheaper and more abundant low grade version. It's not as good, but it's everywhere and people are doing it. Sure, the full odds hunts are still there, but why would most people do that when it's more expensive? This method is way cheaper. Going into ZA, I wanted to shiny hunt my 3 favorite Pokemon from Kalos: Pangoro, Male Meowstic, and Dragalge, whose Mega I knew about ahead of time. Luckily for me, Pancham and Esper spawn in a very early wild zone, and this zone was notorious for being one of the easiest to shiny hunt in, thanks to this door that lets you load in and out faster than any other place in the game. I started this hunt on the day of launch. I stopped my progress dead in my tracks because I wanted these shinies on my team. I used the door method and checked the spawns every single time. I refused to exploit the lack of despawning shinies. It was about 10 hours before I broke. I hated AFK hunting, but I hated not having these shinies more. I kept getting shiny Litleos and Flabébés, my head hurt, and it was Game Freak's fault for not giving me a method hunt. If I had one, I wouldn't have to resort to such debauchery, but a method there was not. So when I was finally putting the game down to get ready for bed, I used a rubber band to make my player farm encounters while I slept. I'm a fraud, a hypocrite, and I'm no better than the rest of you pathetic shiny gatherers. I saw a comment when the game first came out that is one of the realest things I've ever heard. This method is the best for getting any shiny, but the worst method if you want a specific shiny. When I woke up, I only saw shiny lions and goats. I spent the first 2 days of ZA mostly just doing phases for these two. I progressed in the story a little bit, but it felt dirty. I needed them. By the end of day 2, I caught 16 shiny Litleos, 4 being alpha. I caught 10 shiny Skidoos, 2 being alpha, and 2 shiny alpha fletchlings. On day 3, I finally woke up to my red panda, who I named Pajamas. There is a way to optimize certain full odds hunts by running far enough away for them to despawn, but this mostly works on Pokemon outside of wild zones since there's not enough space in most zones to get enough distance for them to despawn. There's 2 areas where this method works the best, and it's 2 areas with some really fun and unique spawns: the rooftops and the sewers. Earlier I mentioned I went into ZA going for a shiny Mega Dragalge, and luckily in the sewers there's a straight line where you can encounter these 4 who are far enough away from these 5 for them to despawn, and when you run up here, these 4 despawn, making it one of the most efficient hunts in the game since you could just run back and forth. But I was not having any luck. I kept dying, and on the same day I got like 4 shiny Lamppost fletchlings I did not catch on principle. This hunt was killing me, but in a good way. I was enjoying the flow of the encounters. It's a flow I haven't felt in a while, and when I finally heard that sparkle, I uncontrollably gasped and felt that familiar sinking feeling in my stomach like I just went on a roller coaster drop. It's the same feeling I got from the DexNav, SOS chains, and other classic methods. I'm not really sure what the overall thesis of this video is supposed to be. I guess it's that I'm a full odds hunter now? It is really bizarre there wasn't a single method to reduce odds in ZA. With Game Freak only ramping up the official acknowledgements of shinies, I hope they give us the same variety in the 10th generation we had in Gen 6. And for the love of God, lift the embargo on shiny legendaries. Putting a blanket lock on all of them is so lame. It would also create a higher tier of shinies. We know there's going to be more overpowered methods in the future, but have those apply to non-legends. Then the people who want a more grindy hunt can go for legendaries who would be immune to shiny inflation since they're in their own market. I can't see one good reason for shiny locking legendaries outside of the mascot of whatever game it is. And with some really good shinies coming out of Gen 9's Pantheon, it would be a wasted opportunity. At the end of the day, the older games are still there to hunt in. I just don't like how Game Freak is handling it in newer games. Shinies are being officially acknowledged more than they've ever been, and yet we're the most restricted we've ever been in ways we can actually get them. That's kind of the problem with Game Freak acknowledging shinies more. It leads to them overstepping and picking what we can and can't hunt for, taking away some of the most fun and rewarding hunts in Pokemon history for no good reason. Why do I have to go back to a bygone era or hunt at full odds to recapture that original magic? I know I've said it again and again, but it is baffling that there's no method hunt in ZA, especially after Arceus gave us massive mass outbreaks. I'm gonna laugh if Mega Dimensions introduces a new hunting method, because then that would just be paywalling something that should already be in the base game in an expansion that should already be in the base game. I mean, I'm still gonna play it because, you know, I'm a Pokemon fan. What am I gonna do, not buy everything they put out?